If you are a Lord of Mysteries fan, you have probably seen a lot of game news recently. And if you haven't been following everything, there is something that might surprise you. There isn't just one new Lord of Mysteries game. There are actually two separate game projects that you might see people talking about online. And the confusing part is that both of them are based on the same universe. So at first, it is easy to think they are somehow connected, but they aren't the same game. They have different developers, different gameplay styles, and honestly, they are trying to give players two very different LOTM experiences. So in this video, I want to break down both games, what we currently know about them, how their gameplay is different, and why both of them could be interesting for completely different reasons. Let's start with the game that most people have already seen. The SPARK NEXA Lord of Mysteries game is a cross-platform RPG being developed with Unreal Engine 5. And from everything shown so far, the main goal is pretty clear. The developers want you to actually step into the world of Lord of Mysteries. We're not just talking about watching Klein's story from the outside. The game is built around the world itself. You can see locations inspired by the novel, including Tingen and the Blackthorn Security Company. There is exploration, quests, combat, and dungeon content. So instead of feeling like you're moving from one battle screen to another, the idea is to make the world feel like a place you can actually enter and explore. And for LOTM, I think this is a really important part, because the setting is almost as important as the characters. The Victorian atmosphere, the churches, the machinery, the steam-powered technology, the mysterious underground organizations. All of these things are a huge part of what makes Lord of Mysteries feel different. If the game can capture that atmosphere properly, just walking around the world could already be a big part of the experience. But the most interesting part is what happens to your character. The game is built around the idea of becoming a Beyonder. And that sounds simple until you remember how complicated the LOTM power system actually is. In most RPGs, you might choose a class like Warrior, Mage, Healer, or Assassin. Then you level up and unlock stronger skills. LOTM doesn't really work like that. Here, your powers are tied to a pathway. Your pathway determines the kind of abilities you can develop. Then you move through different sequences as you become stronger. And the important thing is that the abilities aren't just random upgrades. They have their own identity. A seer isn't simply a weaker version of a warrior. An apprentice doesn't fight like a spectator. Their entire approach to combat and problem-solving can be completely different. That's what makes adapting LOTM into a game so interesting. The developers aren't just making a fantasy RPG. They're trying to turn a very specific power system into something that people can actually play. And we already have an idea of how they're approaching that. The current testing has shown 6 pathways: Seer, Apprentice, Spectator, Warrior, Bard, and Mystery Prior. Now, I've seen some people look at those 6 and immediately ask why the game doesn't have all 22 pathways. But I think we need to be a little careful here. What we've seen during testing shouldn't automatically be treated as the final version of the entire game. There are still a lot of things that can change as development continues. And from a game development point of view, starting with fewer pathways isn't exactly surprising. Imagine trying to balance all 22 pathways at once. Every pathway needs its own abilities. Those abilities need to work in combat. They need to work against different enemies. They need to work in multiplayer situations if multiplayer content is involved. And most importantly, they need to feel different from each other. If every pathway ends up playing almost the same, then the whole point of having 22 pathways disappears. So I would rather see 6 pathways that actually feel unique than 22 pathways that are basically just different names on the same abilities. And this is one of the things I'll personally be watching closely. If the developers can make choosing a pathway feel like making an actual decision, that could become one of the best parts of the game. Because imagine starting as a seer and knowing that your abilities, progression, and playstyle are going to develop around that identity. Then imagine someone else choosing apprentice and having a completely different experience. That's much more interesting than simply picking a character class from a menu. But while everyone was talking about this game, another LOTM game appeared. And this is where things get a little confusing. Because Lord of Mysteries, the Fool is a completely separate project. It isn't another mode of the SPARK NEXA game. It isn't the same game with a different name. It is being developed by Archosaur Games, and its official reveal describes it as a card-based RPG. That one detail tells us a lot about the direction of the game. The first game is focused around putting you inside the world. The second is taking the characters' abilities and world of LOTM and building a different type of RPG around them. Now, when I say card-based RPG, don't think this means it's just a normal card game. A card-based RPG can use cards as part of the combat and character system. Characters, abilities, skills, or other gameplay elements can be represented through cards. The exact details of the Fool's full gameplay system are something we'll have to wait for more information about. But the concept itself actually makes a lot of sense for LOTM. Just look at the characters. Klein has his own abilities. Audrey has her own abilities. Leonard has his own abilities. Eamon is obviously completely different. Then you have Alger, Derek, Katlia, Emlyn, and so many other characters. Instead of creating your own Beyonder, a game like this can make the existing characters the stars of the gameplay. And that completely changes the question you are asking as a player. In the SPARK NEXA game, you might be thinking, which pathway should I choose? In a character-focused card RPG, you're more likely to think, which characters should I use together? And that's a very different type of fun. You could have a team built around certain abilities. You could look for combinations between characters. You could choose characters because you like them. Or you could simply experiment and find a strategy that works. And this is where LOTM has a huge advantage. The series already has a massive cast of characters with different powers and personalities. The developers don't have to invent an entire cast from nothing. They have a huge universe to work with. But there's another interesting possibility here. A game like this could allow characters who don't normally fight together to appear in the same team. Obviously, that doesn't mean the game is changing the novel's actual story. It's simply a game mechanic. And that's something we see in many character-based RPGs. The story and gameplay don't always have to follow the exact same rules. That can actually give players more freedom. You could potentially build teams around characters you would never normally see together in the original story. And for a series like LOTM, that could be really fun. Now let's talk about Klein. Because obviously, whenever there is a new LOTM game, one of the first questions people ask is, what about Klein? Klein is the main character of the first book, and the Fool is obviously one of the most important identities in the entire story. But these two games can use Klein in very different ways. In the SPARK NEXA game, the main attraction is the world you're entering. You're not simply replaying Klein's exact journey. The idea is that the player gets to exist within the LOTM setting. That gives the developers more freedom to create new situations and let players experience the universe from another perspective. The card RPG can go in a different direction. Instead of making the player the main character of everything, it can put more attention on the established cast. That means characters from the novel can become the actual gameplay pieces. And for people who are mainly interested in LOTM because of its characters, that could be a big advantage. This also brings us to another major difference: exploration versus strategy. The SPARK NEXA game is much more about moving through a world. You have places to visit. You have quests. You have enemies. You have your own character. There is a sense of progression through the world. The card RPG is likely to put much more emphasis on what you do during battles and how you build your team. So the experience can be more focused. You don't necessarily need to explore a huge environment to enjoy it. You can focus on your characters, abilities, and strategy. Neither approach is automatically better. It really depends on what you want from a LOTM game. If you've always wanted to walk around Tingen, see the world for yourself, and experience what being a Beyonder might feel like, the SPARK NEXA game is obviously more appealing. But if you mainly want to play with your favorite characters and enjoy a more strategy-focused RPG, the Fool might be more interesting. And honestly, I don't think we should expect these games to feel similar. That's actually a good thing. Imagine if both games tried to do exactly the same thing. Then there would be very little reason for both of them to exist. Having different approaches gives LOTM fans more options. One game can focus on immersion. The other can focus on characters and strategy. And both can explore different parts of the same universe. But there is one thing both games have to get right: the LOTM feeling. This is where I think the developers have the hardest job. Because making a game based on LOTM isn't just about putting the characters into a game and adding some cool effects. The world has a very specific atmosphere. There's always something mysterious happening. People don't always know who they can trust. The churches and secret organizations have their own goals. The pathways have rules. The powers have consequences. And the world feels like there is always something hidden behind what you see. If a game loses that feeling, then it could look like LOTM without actually feeling like LOTM. And that's something I really hope both developers understand. For the SPARK NEXA game, the big challenge will be the pathway system. Can they make the 6 available pathways feel genuinely different? Can they make progression interesting? Can they make becoming stronger feel like you're actually advancing through the LOTM system instead of simply increasing your stats? Those questions are going to matter a lot. For the Fool, the challenge is different. Can the card-based gameplay feel deep enough? Can the characters actually feel unique? Can the developers avoid making every character just another collection of numbers and flashy abilities? Because LOTM fans will notice. If Amon doesn't feel like Amon, people will notice. If Klein's abilities don't feel like Klein's abilities, people will notice. The characters need to have their own identity, and that's probably going to be one of the biggest tests for the card RPG. There's also the question of story. The SPARK NEXA game has a lot of freedom because it can create an experience around the player. The developers don't necessarily have to follow Klein's original journey step by step. That means they can create new situations while still using the world and rules of LOTM. The Fool can approach storytelling differently, because a character-based RPG can use famous characters and locations from the series in a more direct way. But until we see more of the actual game, I wouldn't make too many assumptions about how its story will work. There is still a lot we don't know. Some things are confirmed, some things are shown in trailers, and some things are simply fan theories. Keeping those separate is important. Now, if I had to choose between the two based only on what we've seen so far, I honestly don't think there's a universal answer. For someone who wants immersion, I'd lean toward the SPARK NEXA game. The idea of creating your own Beyonder and entering the world of LOTM is something fans have wanted for a long time. But for someone who loves the characters and enjoys strategy games, the Fool could be the better choice. And there's nothing stopping someone from enjoying both. That's actually what makes this situation pretty interesting. We're getting two different interpretations of the same universe, and they don't have to fight for the exact same audience. One can be the game where you say, I want to become a Beyonder. The other can be the game where you say, I want to build my own LOTM team. And both of those ideas sound pretty good to me. Of course, the real test will come when the games are actually in players' hands. Trailers can look amazing. Promotional art can look amazing. But after a few hours of gameplay, that's when we find out whether the systems actually work. Does the combat stay fun? Does progression feel rewarding? Does the world feel alive? And does the game still feel like Lord of Mysteries after you've been playing it for dozens of hours? Those are the questions that matter. So if you're confused about the two games, here's the simplest way to remember it. The SPARK NEXA game is a cross-platform RPG focused on letting you experience the LOTM world and its Beyonder system. Lord of Mysteries. The Fool is a separate card-based RPG from Archosaur Games, built around a very different style of gameplay. Same universe, different developers, different gameplay, and potentially two very different experiences. Personally, I'm really curious to see where both of them go. I'm especially interested in the pathway system because that's one area where LOTM can really stand out from other RPGs. And I'm also curious about The Fool because turning a story as complicated as LOTM into a card-based RPG is definitely an interesting challenge. If you could only choose one, which would you pick? Tell me your choice in the comments. And if you want more Lord of Mysteries game news, pathway content, and LOTM lore, subscribe to the channel.